At this point, we're going to rush off in pursuit of further ideas and inspiration. We have some rapid-fire presentations coming up now, and we want you to learn as much about the coalition and about the members of the coalition and about the work they're doing, but we only have so much time in the day and a half that we're together. So we've created a session or series of sessions entitled Ignite Talks. And I've seen these in different contexts. Some people call them lightning talks or flash talks. But the idea is to give people 5 minutes of time to come up, talk about their program, and inspire you to come back and talk to them. Again, at the poster session, all the people who are doing Ignite Talks will have posters. You'll have a chance to talk to them, and in some cases, students who are part of that program, which I think is a very authentic way to learn about the impact of things. So we will kick that off. And the first one is by Marianne Cowan from Bates, the Associate Director of Program Design at Bates College for their Purposeful Work program. She's also a 92 graduate of Bates. And I have to say that Bates has really been an inspiration for us. Now, we talk a lot in the coalition, as Angela was mentioning, about the Gallup survey, which really provided us with inspiration from the beginning. And the Gallup survey is about student well-being, but it's also about students finding identity, agency, and purpose. And Bates, through the leadership of President Spencer and all the faculty and others who have worked at Bates, have really embodied that idea of finding purpose, finding purposeful work in what they do with their students. So we're very excited to have Marianne come up to the stage and present. And these are 5-minute talks. So we have a system where Dana will hold up a yellow card when people get to 4 minutes and a red card at 5 minutes. So just to let people know that their time is very much running out. So, Marianne, thank you so much for being here.
So good morning. I'm Marianne Cowan from, again, the Center for Purposeful Work at Bates College. The city of Lewiston, Maine, which Bates calls home, is a former mill town on the Androscoggin River. The river name Androscoggin is an English variation on the Wabanaki place name, roughly translated as place to smoke fish at the falls. And those falls are important. Much of Lewiston's 19th century economic development came from textile mills powered by those great falls of the Androscoggin, spinning weaving looms like I assume you see the one pictured here. So I've decided to use the messy, multi-directional framework of weaving, as Angela did, to share our approach to purposeful work at Bates. I think the key takeaways, your learning goals for this poster session later this afternoon are, one, that the purposeful work philosophy or process is grounded in the priority of well-being, which we have defined with a developmental psychology lens at Bates, and two, that it is very intentionally woven into every aspect of the student experience so that it becomes a way of life and a mindset for the students. Some of our programs would be easily planted and scaled in another institution. Bates is an undergraduate institution of 2,000 students, so scale is an important thing for us to talk about here at this conference. And some are probably more challenging, but I do look forward to talking about those possibilities with folks later today. We knew, even in 2014, that the word purpose or purposeful would be loaded and very subjective. So we have laid out and stayed faithful to these definitions and premises. We emphasize to students that work is happening in every aspect and role of their life, now as students and in their future. It was very important from our earliest conversations that purposefulness and purposeful work had to have positive impact on the world outside of the individual. We teach students about being attuned to what the world needs. We talk also a great deal about alignment and therefore discovery of one's values, interests, and strengths as they explore work. So there is an equation we teach about exploration of self in relation to others, leading to purpose in work and overall well-being. I'm not getting a advance. There we go. So these are the processes or mindsets that we hope students will gain in competency, recognition, and confidence in building habits of mind as they repeat them over and over in every aspect of their Bates experience over their 4-year arc with us. They start with exploration, they test out experiences, they reflect on their learning, they cycle back to more exploration, testing, achieving alignment, and importantly, the ability to continue to reflect upon and articulate what they are gaining and bringing to the table or to the world. We are very intentional in how we lead students through those practices, weaving those habits of mind through each of our programs. These are our programs, or this is our suite of programs. In new student orientation, in collaboration with the Dean of Students, we encourage exploration and reflection of values and interests. The Job Shadow program incorporates testing and reflection. The first-year seminar on the purpose of college and their purpose as a college student weaves in daily reflective writing and articulation skills at various levels of work and career exploration. The Purposeful Work internship program has a highly structured reflection and feedback cohort model accompanying its summer of career-related experience. The Purposeful Work infusion courses ask students to reflect in infinitely unique ways about the connection between their course material in cellular biology or the Hebrew Bible and the concepts of work and purpose. So on my poster later this afternoon, I've detailed a few examples visually, and I'd love to talk with folks about any of those programs across the full student experience, curricular, co-curricular, and career and job related. It is our aim through this very intentional weaving that we prepare students with the tools they need to create lives of purpose and meaning. We think of this as our core mission, or as core to our mission as a liberal arts college. We reach them where they are and hopefully everywhere that they are. One important way we think about our outcomes in the Center for Purposeful Work is in terms of our remarkable reach and student participation. So I'll leave you with some of those data here. And I can't see the colors of the cards. But that's our reach, and I'd love to talk with you more about scaling from a 2,000 student institution to yours.
Thank you very much, Marianne. So we have our next Ignite talk, there we go, from Brandy Papadon-Smith, who's the director of Work Plus Learn at Arizona State University. And there's some purpose in the juxtaposition of these two talks because in some ways they're related. And it actually shows what Marianne was saying at the very end of her presentation is that there is a way to scale programs like what is going on at Bates to a much larger institution like Arizona State University. So Brandy's going to tell us a little bit about that. And just so you know, we're going to not have questions for these Ignite talks. We're going to give you a little bit of time at the end to think about things that you would like to ask the presenters and then encourage you to find them, certainly during the poster session, but also find them in the breaks. So, Brandy.
Wonderful, thank you. Good morning, my name is Brandy Papadon-Smith, and I serve as director of a unit called Work Plus Learn at Arizona State University. We sit within University College at ASU, and wanted to share just a brief update about some work we've been doing over the past several years that has been so deeply, not just informed, but supported by this coalition. Frankly, the actual creation of this unit was based upon the very early mission and the grand challenge that was put out by the coalition. And I wanted to pull from that some language that really speaks to what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we look at the grand challenge and the focus on figuring out which experiences during a student's education are most likely to lead to transformative outcomes. And it needs to make those available to students at scale. Scale is always an interesting term, especially when you're at an institution of 140,000 plus students. But the one thing we figured out early on is scale doesn't mean one size fits all. It doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. Our learner population is far too diverse to be able to actually figure out one thing that's going to work for everybody. And the other thing, too, we figured out is that we can't keep asking our students to do more and to do different. We needed to look inside and we needed to figure out how to change what our students were already involved in for the better, to meet their needs. And so we really dial in and focus on this concept of integration. And not only, the coalition and Gallup's Bates research early on about what was so meaningful to students during their college experience, but even more research coming out of Strada, who's also a fantastic supporter of our work at ASU too, is around this concept of integration and the impact of work-integrated learning. As you can see on there and is connected to the mission of the coalition, it's not just about economic lift, it's also about long-term satisfaction, long-term ability for our students as they graduate and as they move on to look back at their educational experience and feel it was worth it, feel it had an impact, a positive impact on their post-completion lives. So our choice to focus deeply on work-integrated learning is really also allowing us to explore some pretty critical questions for us. So what might a leaderless coalition look like? And I'll talk about that in just a second too, related to work-integrated learning. How might we take a look at closing equity gaps by making work-integrated learning widely accessible, which means integration, not more and different, but true integration in what our students are already doing. And how can we use technology to really redesign work and learning? And what does that mean and what kind of impact does that have on changing career pathways of the future? A little bit about how we do our work. We are really rooted in human-centered design and design thinking. We apply that to how we approach our work, which means our students, our faculty, our staff, our partners at other institutions, they're all co-designers. They are with us at every step of the process as we do our work. What it also means is that we really sit in the problem. We aren't jumping to solutions. We like to say that we're solutions agnostic, and what that means is that we don't connect to a solution and stick with it and hold on to it to its miserable failing end, possibly. We try it out, and then we iterate upon it, and then we prototype something new based upon what we've learned, right? And so that ability to be solutions agnostic has actually proved a lot of success, of which one of them being in particular, a Work Plus. As you can see on the screen, the Work Plus Collective was something that was born last year based upon a program at ASU called Work Plus that is focusing on redesigning student employment to be an intentionally integrated working and learning experience. It's also quite wonderful to be here at Georgetown because Georgetown has done a lot of research that also informed the Work Plus program around working learners and the importance of how we support our working learners, those individuals who are pursuing higher education while working at the same time. We found out we weren't the only ones who cared about this and who were interested in actually tackling a redesign. As you see on the screen, and as in this room, a couple partners actually here, University of Maine, University of Michigan, Dearborn. Not sure if anybody else from any of these schools is here too. But they've all jumped into this crazy little sandbox with us and said, yes, we can do better for our student employees. We need to do better for our student employees. And they're willing to sit in the problem with us. They're willing to be solutions agnostic. So what we've done is we've also taken a lot of these learnings from the success that we have found related to the Work Plus Collective, and we're also trying it with a new idea. This is again based upon a couple years of piloting different ideas at the institution, working with our faculty to figure out how do we take a look at curriculum and how do we do a better job again of integrating experiences into the curriculum and still honoring what our faculty have to bring to the table as far as the curricular experiences, the knowledge base they have. So how do we find this ability to evolve and bring industry, bring employer partners into the fold in a way that truly, again, still honors the curricular core of what is necessary, but is allowing students to be able to apply the knowledge they're learning immediately. And so this Work Integrated Learning Accelerator is something that we're piloting this summer as well. So we welcome you to come chat with us at the poster session. I have a couple colleagues here from ASU that are also will be there to chat as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And now on to the next Ignite talk. And as you can see, these talks are in many ways related. Bates is doing purposeful work. ASU is doing Work Plus Learn. It's involving University of Michigan Dearborn. I think that's emblematic of what the coalition is seeking to achieve. We are an organization that brings in different types of institutions, a variety of different types of institutions, and we welcome that. We think that that is strength for us and that is strength for the coalition, and actually that makes all of us better by having small schools, big schools, state schools, community colleges, all of those schools working together for the same purpose. So next, we have an Ignite talk from Domenico Grasso, who's the chancellor of the University of Michigan Dearborn. He has a video that he's going to be showing, which gives you the real voice of the students who have experienced some of this, the lowercase storytelling and the uppercase storytelling that Angela was talking about.
Thanks very much, Keith. So I am from the University of Michigan, Dearborn. The Dearborn campus is a campus of opportunity. We have a lot of first-generation students, first-generation immigrants, first-generation college students, a lot of Pell students. So we're quite a bit different from our branch campus in Ann Arbor that you might be familiar with, that did win a national football championship this year, just as a point. But I am representing our associate provost, and this is an indication of how committed we are to this, because she couldn't come here and I came in her stead. She's a professor of philosophy. She wrote a great book called Intellectual Empathy that I highly recommend to you. But this is her idea and her brainchild, and it riffs off of Shamananda Adichie's terrific TED Talk, which many of you have seen, and if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that. It's one of the top 10 talks ever, and it's called The Danger of a Single Story. And this is our students telling their stories in their own words. And this is important because it really relates to identity, agency, and purpose, in that they do not get collectively lumped into. All of them are first-generation Pell students, and they're all the same because they're first-generation Pell students. Each one comes with a different story. Each one has had an opportunity to reflect, and we are all of us are enriched by hearing their stories. So this ties directly to what Angela's talking. I was so excited to hear her talk about the same thing. So I'm just going to turn it over, and this is a video that Maureen Linker, our associate provost, and her team put together, and I'd be happy to discuss it at the happy hour or poster session or at a bar or wherever this group meets next.
Storytelling, arguably the world's oldest art form. Huddled around campfires, trying to make sense of the world. Folk tales, Arabian Nights, Anansi, Coyote, You, Me, Shakespeare's plays, and best-selling novels. Rap battles and blockbuster movies. Poetry, lyrics, barroom banter, all stories. At U of M Dearborn, we were interested in our students' stories. Stories told from the margins, challenging the danger of a single story. Stories from the shadow of Ann Arbor and Detroit. Aided by the Coalition for Transformational Education and our chancellor, we set out to find these stories. We watched and learned with our students as they unlocked unexpected creativity, as they moved from shy to confident, as they realized the value of their voice and their experiences, as they became passionate about this work. The best way to demonstrate how our students were able to gain insight into their identity, agency, and purpose is to let one of our students share her work and speak for herself.
Last summer, I went on a study abroad trip to Gdansk, Poland. Those 2 months that I spent in Poland were the time of my life. However, out of every single memorable day, there was one tiny, otherwise insignificant moment in particular that will remain etched in my mind forever. My study abroad group and I were 3 weeks into the trip, each week bringing a new adventure to a different historical site. This week, we were going to Stutthof, a concentration camp that killed at least half of its 110,000 prisoners between its opening in 1939 to its liberation in 1945. Stutthof was about an hour's drive away from where we were staying in Gdansk, so we all met out behind our dorms for a rental bus to pick us up. I watched out the window as we eventually rolled out of the Polish suburbs and onto bumpy country roads. When we arrived, we all shuffled out of the bus and waited outside the camp for our tour guide, each one of us pulling our jackets tight to keep warm on that appropriately cold and dreary day. We got situated with our tour guide, and he proceeded to lead us through the camp, telling us stories of starvation, disease, and gruesome murder. There were several things in Stutthof that affected me deeper than others, like a pile of shoe soles that spanned the width of a long room as tall as my chest, an inconceivably long glass case filled with nothing but ash and charred bone, and, of course, the realization that I was walking along the same paths where tens of thousands of people had taken their last breaths. However, what really struck me was a different, relatively unemotional part of the camp. To quote a journal entry that I wrote when we returned back to the dorms, there were 2 or 3 things within Stutthof that I believe affected me the most, one of which was within the women's housing, when we passed by a supportive column filled with the carvings of the women who had lived there. It struck me deeply in that moment, realizing how these people had practically put their lives on the line for self-expression. That's how much we need it as human beings, that the graffiti was deemed worth the risk of death. As I stood in wonder, I tried to make out what some of the carvings might have said, but they were all either written in a language I couldn't understand or had lost their visual clarity to the passage of time. Regardless, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Here were these women experiencing genocide firsthand, yet something had moved them to carve message of importance into the support column. Was it an act of rebellion? Was it a source of motivation to keep going? Or was it just a form of preservation, to nick up a beam with writing that could endure after death? To me, in its simplicity, the graffiti on the support column represented something so magnificently human, the desire to leave something behind that's proof to ourselves and the world that I was here. After talking to several of my peers that had accompanied me to Stutthof, I found that they hadn't found such significance in the support beam, if they even noticed the graffiti in the first place. This juxtaposition and perspective further demonstrated to me that, as a creative, I just might see the world in a different way than the others around me. It also helped to solidify my own role in the world, not only as a creative, but as an aspiring journalist, to give a voice to people who can't or won't share their stories. I knew I wanted to be a writer ever since I was a kid, but it wasn't until recently that I realized that I was made to hear and share real human stories.
Their brief, personal stories reflected universal experiences. We initially thought we would be learning about our students through their final stories. But learning this process along with them, they taught us so much about who they were, their lives, their identities, their search for meaning and purpose. Everyone involved realized the importance of these stories, the sharing. The lived experiences of our students were important to share and highlight. The students engaged in this work saw opportunities and paths open to them that they had not previously considered. They learned they had unexplored creative potential and profound collaborative energy. At no point was our students' passion for and commitment to this project more obvious than when we traveled with 6 of them to the 11th International Digital Storytelling Conference in Baltimore, where they presented their work and received a standing ovation for their efforts. Through this project, our students took their place in the ancient tradition of storytelling, using stories to reflect individual and universal truths about themselves, our campus, their communities, and our area.
Creative retellings of the truth are more than my dream career. They're my sustenance. And if I can see the world in this way, I know I have a duty to tell the tales of anyone and everyone, to shout that we were here.